So friends, it is undeniably a dark day. It's a dark day for the FBI, it's a dark day for the American people, and it's a dark day for our allies around the globe. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, Senate Republicans, not all of them, but most of them, just confirmed an entirely unqualified candidate to be the director of the FBI, Kash Patel. Let's start with the new reporting. This from the New York Times. Senate confirms Kash Patel as next FBI director. And that article begins, the Senate on Thursday narrowly confirmed Kash Patel as the next director of the FBI, installing a hard-line critic of the Bureau, whose unwavering loyalty to President Trump has raised questions over the independence of the nation's most powerful law enforcement agency. The 51-49 vote, with 2 Republican defections, means that Patel will now oversee the vast surveillance and investigative powers of the FBI, whose mission is seeking out the truth, even if it angers the president. As its director, Patel will take over as the Bureau has entered a particularly turbulent period with the forced departures of some of its top officials. Democrats in the Senate had hoped to slow his nomination, citing Mr. Patel's repeated promises to enact a campaign of revenge on Mr. Trump's behalf, his pledge to reshape the agency, and his refusal to say that Trump lost the 2020 election. But they had little success swaying their colleagues across the aisle, who are wary of eliciting the political wrath of Trump or his powerful allies like Elon Musk. This month, Senator Richard Durbin of Illinois, the top Democrat on the Judiciary Committee, accused Mr. Patel of improperly directing a slew of forced departures at the Bureau without having been confirmed as its leader. Mr. Durbin added on Thursday that Mr. Patel's apparent involvement stood at odds with his claim during his hearing that he was unaware of any political retribution at the FBI that was unfolding as he testified. Mr. Patel's financial disclosures also raised eyebrows, but none of those concerns substantially shifted his support, allowing him to easily glide through the confirmation process. In the end, just 2 Republicans opposed Mr. Patel's nomination: Senator Lisa Murkowski, a centrist from Alaska, and Senator Susan Collins of Maine. So friends, I've previously spoken about how there are at least 3 data points that show Kash Patel is entirely unqualified. In my opinion, they disqualify him from serving as director of the FBI. But I want to focus on just one of those data points today, because if you're not immersed in all things criminal law, and why would you be, this is something you might not know. If an FBI agent testifies in a trial and the judge declares that the FBI agent is not a credible witness, there are some serious implications and consequences to both the FBI agent and to the prosecutors. Now, this holds true not only for FBI agents, but for all law enforcement officers and agents, detectives and investigators and police officers. But let me use an FBI agent as an example. Remember how when Kash Patel testified in that trial in Colorado that was designed to determine if Donald Trump had engaged in insurrection? He was called by Donald Trump's lawyers as a witness. And the judge announced that he was not credible. The judge also went on to rule that Donald Trump, of course, engaged in insurrection, a ruling that was affirmed by the Colorado Supreme Court, a ruling that the U.S. Supreme Court didn't even touch in the challenge to Donald Trump's ability to continue to hold office, even though he engaged in insurrection and was therefore disqualified under the very language of the 14th Amendment. The Supreme Court didn't disagree with or disavow the Colorado findings by the trial court and the Colorado Supreme Court that Trump engaged in insurrection. He did. But more importantly for our discussion today, that judge found that Kash Patel was not a credible witness. What are the implications of that? Well, you know what? Once a judge decides that you are not a credible witness and you're a law enforcement officer, you can virtually never testify in court again, with some limited exceptions. Let me break it down. At the D.C. U.S. Attorney's Office, the largest U.S. Attorney's Office, where I worked for decades, there is something called the Lewis List. This is not a secret. This is not privileged information. The Lewis List, named after a case involving a defendant named Lewis. The Lewis List was a collection of officers, agents, detectives, investigators, street officers, all law enforcement officers who had such serious credibility problems that they had to go on the Lewis List and prosecutors were not permitted to put them on the stand. Why? Well, think about it. If Kash Patel ever took the witness stand in a criminal trial, the defense attorney would cross-examine him on, well, wait a minute, Mr. Patel, another judge found that you're not a credible witness. He would be eviscerated on the stand. That's why we don't put witnesses on the stand if a judge has found that they are not credible, right? Not only would the jury probably laugh Kash Patel's testimony out of court, given that earlier judicial finding of a lack of credibility, but the stink from Patel's lack of credibility would blow back on the prosecutors, and the whole thing would be tainted. That's why we would keep the Lewis List, and we would make sure that if there were officers who had such damaging credibility issues that they couldn't be sponsored, they couldn't be called as a witness by a prosecutor, we wouldn't call them. What are the implications of that? Well, the guy who is apparently going to head up the FBI, who will be supervising, thousands of FBI agents who will be testifying in criminal trials every day, that guy couldn't even go on the witness stand himself because of his lack of credibility as found by a judge. But he is expected to supervise and be respected by the good men and women of the FBI. Are you kidding me? Let me use an analogy. That would be like taking a doctor whose medical license had been revoked because that doctor engaged in serious medical malpractice and ended up killing a patient, for example. Taking that doctor and just putting him back into the operating room as the head of a surgical team. Nobody would do that. But that, in essence, is what is now going to unfold at the FBI. A person is going to be the director, the supervisor of all FBI agents, the people who are out there not only investigating crime, but testifying in criminal trials. And that person could never hit the stand. No prosecutor would sponsor that person's testimony because a judge watched him, listened to him, compared all of the other evidence in that Colorado case against his testimony and said, he is not a credible witness. And that's why I say it is a dark day for the good men and women of the FBI with whom I worked for years, primarily in RICO cases in the courts of Washington, D.C. It's a dark day for the American people, and it is undeniably a dark day for our allies around the globe that we now have the likes of Kash Patel heading up the FBI. But friends, let's end with this. I have been looking for a point of light in connection with this dark development of Kash Patel being confirmed as director of the FBI. And it's hard to find a point of light, right? But, I close one eye and I squint with the other and I turn my head just so, and this is the faint point of light that I'm able to find. The good men and women of the FBI will resist unlawful orders. What do I mean by that? They are duty-bound to obey the law, to remain loyal to the Constitution, not to somebody like Kash Patel or Donald Trump. And they take those responsibilities, they take their oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, deadly seriously. So if Kash Patel starts running wild, going after Donald Trump's perceived enemies with no evidence that those people committed any crimes, I expect the good men and women of the FBI to abide by their oath, to follow the law, and to refuse to engage in revenge investigations. Because those men and women at the FBI know that justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe. Please stay tuned. And I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.